Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. The Trudeau Liberals are going to do everything that they can come the 2019 election in order to ensure that they get back into power. And this could be changing the election laws that surround our country. They've already done that. I mean, they even went to great lengths when this ended up happening to try and have Election Canada implement these changes before it was even debated on the House of Commons, before the legislation was even passed, which is an extremely corrupt thing to do. And they're going to do everything that they can. And I mean, they've already loosened the election laws to go back to the idea of vouching for somebody rather than presenting a piece of ID with that BS claim that it's racist trying to have someone present an ID in order to prove who they are when you go to vote, even though the fact that you need an ID for everything these days. You need an ID to drive, you need an ID to buy cigarettes, to buy alcohol. Everybody and their mother has some piece of ID that they can prove themselves. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. What I'm here to talk to you about has to do with an article that came out of CBC News. It came out on February 19th, so it's been a few days, but I didn't get around to talking to it till now. And what it's going to do is it's going to regulate social media when it comes up to election time. So this is what the article is saying. It says, Minister tasked with safeguarding election calls on committee to look at regulating Facebook and Twitter. Now, I don't know exactly what the hell they would have to regulate on here. Twitter and both Twitter and Facebook have proven themselves to be left-wing oriented, so they're doing everything they can to censor the conservative voice while promoting the liberal progressive voice, so I don't see what the point of that is anyway. But the idea of it is that it will, right now, the main opposition to Trudeau is online, and I've said this for a long time. You can go back to, I'm pretty sure, episodes well over a year ago where I was saying that the main opposition to Trudeau is on the online presence. That's you, that's me, that's people who are sharing, talking about what this government has done. And this is what this new bill is really going to do. It's trying to suppress our voices. The media, for the most part, is already on Trudeau's side. At least the biggest sources are. CBC has been one that has been on Trudeau's side. They have been ever since the 2015 election, when he said that he was going to give more money to CBC. He was going to reverse the cuts that Harper made, and then he was going to give them even more. And then you have, CTV News, you got Global. Those have always been on his side. National Post has been better at taking the Trudeau government to task, but they still not been great in my opinion. They could do much more. But just to look at how effective the online voice is, all you have to do is look to last summer. Last summer is when the allegations against Trudeau that in the year 2000 at a music festival he had groped a reporter came out. Now, this was covered up for a long time, and then it was the online presence that discovered this. People on Twitter and Facebook were the ones who figured this out and brought it into the light that forced the corporate media to report on it. In fact, one thing we found out was that this was a story that CBC had sat on for over a month and decided not to talk about it until everyone else started talking about it. So pretty much everyone forced CBC and other corporate news sources to actually bring this story up. More or less, they got shamed into doing it. But what this ends up saying, it says Gold invites committee to study regulations or legislation lead up to federal election. Democratic Institution Minister Karina Gold today called on Commons Committee to look at the possibility of Canadian government imposing new rules on social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter in the lead up to the next federal election. She says, quote, I would encourage this committee to do a study in the role of social media in democracy, if that is something that you think is interesting, to hold the social media companies to account. I would welcome suggestions and feedback in terms of how to appropriately regulate or legislate that behavior, because I think one of the biggest challenges, and you can see this around the world, is the path forward is not clear. End quote. Now, the thing is this sort of idea that they're talking about, it's not just going to be the idea of fake news. What I believe is they're really doing here is maybe that's the pretext that they're going to start out with. They're going to start out with the idea that, well, we want to regulate fake news and bots because, Russia hacked the US election, even though what has been come out of the Mueller investigation so far, there's been next to nothing that's really proven a collusion there, not in the way that they have been presenting it. They've been trying to present it as if Putin put Trump into the White House. But they're going to use this as a reason to legislate and regulate social media. But from there, it's going to be more along the lines of the Chinese social point system, which is they're not going to allow any sort of dissent online, and that's the sort of thing we're going to regulate. This is something that they've been pushing for a long time now. We can even look back to over a year ago where they have been having this idea that they want to regulate online activity, and any sort of dissent gets hushed up. But before we get into that, just going to quickly finish up the other thing she says here. She says, we want to ensure that we're providing that important public space that social media provides to people to express themselves, but also mitigate some of the negative impact that can also arise through social media. And so I think it would be something very interesting for this committee to work on if you choose to do that. They're going to do it. It's not if you choose to do that. It is going to happen. You can guarantee it. But the thing is the government's job is not to regulate the, negative impacts that come from social media. The government's job is to prevent and punish those which are criminal activities, but now they're talking about negative impact, negative interactions, or how social media is used in a way that they don't like. The problem with this, too, is that we're talking about a generation that doesn't understand social media. A lot of people from the older generation just can't wrap their heads around it. You saw this when there's been talks about this in the past. We saw this when Mark Zuckerberg was sitting in front of Congress a few months ago. We saw this when they were in Europe when they were talking about the Article 11 and 13, I believe they are. They don't understand the impact or the importance of social media, but they're going to be the ones that dictate how it's supposed to be regulated. I come from a generation that grew up on this. We've been on the internet since we were kids. I was probably one of the later ones to even start up on the internet because we didn't have the internet for a long time. My parents actually didn't want to get that. We didn't have cable or internet back when I was a young kid in elementary school. But I still grew up with the internet, and many else did, whether that was at school, at other people's place. So we understand what it's for, the impact of it, much better than the people sitting in government. But this sort of talk goes back well over a year. In fact, it may be pushing a couple years now. Because we can see here that this is back from November 9th, 2017. The federal government is blocking social media users deleting posts. Porn, spam, and hate among the top reasons cited for blocking Facebook and Twitter users. Canadian government departments have quietly blocked nearly 22,000 Facebook and Twitter users, with Global Affairs Canada accounting for 20,000 of the blocked accounts, CBC News has learned. Moreover, nearly 1,500 posts, a combination of official messages and comments from readers, have been deleted from various government social media accounts since January 2016. Now, here's the thing. They say at the top in the byline, it says, porn, spam, and hate among the top reasons for blocking Facebook and Twitter users. But as always, it never stays here. It always moves on to something else. And this was what we ended up seeing when they started taking down the, is it here? Yeah, the parody account targeting Liberal MPs. We could see that this is exactly what they were really going for. Suppress the dissenting voices. There were a number of people that had great parody accounts that were going on at that time. But because it was making a fool out of the government, more or less by just imitating them, they ended up taking them down. In fact, the Catherine McKenna one, it's still around today, but it was originally taken down. It is so great. It is so great that whoever runs the Catherine McKenna account still, to this day, fools people into thinking that this is actually something that Catherine McKenna has tweeted out. Because all the person does is just put out the most ridiculous things that comes to environmentalism or climate change, and that's all they have to do. It's fantastic. But we were seeing this even back when we look towards about a year ago, February. This is from the Star. Trudeau to Facebook. Fix your fake news problem or face stricter regulations. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has warned social media network giant Facebook it needs to fix the fake news problem or face stronger regulations in Ottawa. Now, the thing I don't like about this, again, is that they are dictating what is fake news and what isn't fake news. But many things that someone would call fake news can actually be the truth. I mean, let's take the idea when it comes to climate change right now. They would say that anybody that is skeptical of climate change is a denier and is pushing fake news. But if people are pointing out how there are discrepancies in the science or this doesn't add up, that can be considered fake news, even though it's a healthy skepticism of what we've been told is the reality. So it's very important to have a free and open social media, especially because for many people these days, social media is an extension of the public. So for that reason, you have to be able to speak openly in the public, just like you should be able to speak openly on social media. But this is not what the government does, or wants, I should say. Because it makes me wonder if accounts such as mine, if other channels that do similar sort of dissenting views of the government, are we the ones that are going to be targeted of this because we are having a negative impact, whatever that has to mean. I mean, they don't give definitions, they just say a negative impact, which is a very broad statement. I mean, if what we're talking about is damaging to the government, if we find something that is damaging, like the Groper Gate from last year, then is that something that's going to get censored online? And I mean, YouTube's already doing its job by censoring what it considers conspiracy videos. They're doing a good job at censoring those, and they've just even recently announced that you can get demonetized by your comment section. So not even something that you say, but if somebody comes on, even if they want to screw with you and just start dropping N-bombs everywhere, you can't control that. But that is something that they're going to do. They're going to demonetize your videos simply because of that. So there's enough censorship that's on the go right now, but they still want more. And we have more examples. This is from April 30th, 2018. Will the Liberals crack down on Facebook in new bill to modernize Canadian elections? And this is going back to just what I was touching on in the beginning about the changes that were made to the Elections Canada, the one that Trudeau tried to push through without any sort of without any real debate or even that it had been passed by a vote in the House of Commons. And I think we're going to see much more of this, especially because something that was much more recent is that MPs invite Zuckerberg, Twitter CEO, to Ottawa to talk fake news. International Grant Committee meeting set for May 28th. And we know how they're going to go around this, especially with a Liberal dominated. They're not going to touch on the censorship that has gone on. I mean, for those who saw the Joe Rogan podcast with Jack Dorsey, it was a softball, terribly done interview. He didn't press him on these problems. He was just sort of shooting the shit, talking the way he would with any other guest, but there was a real controversy that was going on, especially with the Project Veritas videos that came out against Twitter, which showed certain things, such as how they have access to all your DMs, even if you delete them. They're there forever, just you don't get to see them. We saw how they were shadow banning people and fully admitting they're shadow banning. It happens on Facebook too. So there's plenty of reasons that we should be concerned about this sort of thing, especially when they start talking about the fake news. Big data is a big part of election cycles these days. It's what influences more of the masses these days than television does or the news or any of that. And I think that the election of Donald Trump proved that. He's been called the first Twitter president for a good reason. It's because he had to go there because all he got was negative coverage in the press. He was getting a lot of coverage, but it was all negative. And actually, in some ways, may have worked to his advantage simply because of the fact that he simply because of the fact that he got so much more attention than anyone else that was running for president, especially when we're talking about the Republican primaries. So that probably actually gave more attention. But it was really Twitter where he made his impact. Now, the thing is also what has me concerned, especially when we're discussing Facebook, is the connection that is there between the Liberal government and Facebook. And I've talked about this in a video that I put out last year, because last year a hashtag was going around called Ontario Election Integrity, which was showing that there was a connection between the Liberal Party, both provincial and federal, leading back to the public service pool, which is the sort of people that go around canvassing for votes. And we were showing how a lot of groups and organizations were actually involved in this, and were their staff were the ones that were inside this public pool. I'm going to quickly, I don't want to be one of those guys, but I'm going to quickly play a little bit of the video that I did. But first, before I do, I wanted to just quickly go to this. So I think you can all see. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, hold on. There, I'll get my ugly mug out of the way. So this right here was back when I was doing this this video. I made some flow charts to show the connection between everyone. So this is Canada 2020. Canada 2020 has been, it's pretty much Justin Trudeau's, how do I describe it? I would say that it's sort of his, it's like his lobbying firm, more or less. If we're putting aside the Trudeau Foundation, Canada 2020 is an organization that's meant to create progressive events and bring people together. But the thing is that right from the get-go, it's been staffed with some real liberal insiders. It was created by Thomas Pitfield. Thomas Pitfield is one of Trudeau's childhood friends, and we can see him here, if you can see my cursor. So we got Thomas Pitfield. He's the co-founder and the president, who is married to Anna Gainey. And Anna Gainey was the she's not anymore. I think it was last year that she was, this was changed, but she was the president of the Liberal Party of Canada. I mean, that right there says a lot about it. Oh yeah, and if you look down here, Pitfield and Thomas Pitfield and Anna Gainey vacationed with Trudeau on the Angakon Island, the one that a couple of years ago he got found violating for the four sections of the ethics code. But we look down here. This is Kevin Chan. Kevin Chan is head of public policy for Facebook in Canada. And he's met with Conservative Party leader Scheer in May 1st to discuss civic engagement and election integrity online. He served in executive roles in federal public service, served as policy director to the former Liberal Party leader Michael Ignatieff, met with federal cabinet ministers including Bill Morneau, the finance minister, and is not registered as a lobbyist. Previously served as director of policy, parliamentary affairs, and research in the office of the Privacy Commission of Canada. Visiting policy fellow at Simon Fraser University, as director of policy in the office of the leader of opposition in the House of Commons. This was back when the Liberals were the opposition. This is going back when the Liberals were the opposition, back before 2011, and served as director of the office of the clerk of the Privy Council. So we can see that there's a huge connection between the Liberal Party and Trudeau going back to Canada 2020 and also to Facebook. The thing is, too, is when we're talking about the creator of Canada 2020, Thomas Pitfield, is also the founder of Data Science Inc. And Data Science Inc. works for the Liberalist server. The Liberalist server is it's a server that is used by the Liberal Party of Canada in order to accumulate a bunch of data on people. Now, this is said to be data for riding, so they designate a riding based on, is it a shoe-in to win, or is it no chance of winning whatsoever? And this is how they canvass, go door to door, and make calls to people in trying to get support. Now, the thing is I do believe that the Liberalist server goes farther than that. I mean, we do know a few other things. First is that the Liberalist server is doing things such as calculating the age of the people living in houses. How big is the family? How many kids are living in that household? Is it a a family that's still together? Is it split, like single mom or single dad? This is the sort of information they're getting. But I believe that they're also gaining this sort of information and in a way to be used against you. It's not just for the votes, for the ridings, but it's actually collecting all your personal data as well. And this is what I believe is somewhere where some of the connection with Facebook comes from. I can't prove this part. This is just a theory that I have. But I believe I'm right on that. Now, I'm going to show you this clip I did from, when did I make this one? It was June 1st, 2018, about a week before the Ontario election. So this is called Rigging the Game Trudeau Style. As we get more into the Facebook scandals that have been plaguing both American politics and Canadian politics and all across the world, we can look towards Kevin Chan.
I want to begin by sharing that while we do not yet have all of the facts surrounding the situation with Cambridge Analytica, what is alleged to have occurred is a huge breach of trust to our users, and for that, we are very sorry.
Kevin Chan is a member of Canada 2020 and is also Facebook's Canadian head of public policy. Chan was executive assistant to the clerk of the Privy Council, the highest-ranking bureaucrat in federal government until 2009. He went on to become the former policy director for ex-Liberal Party leader Michael Ignatieff. He has been featured next to members of the Liberal caucus.
So I just wanted to point out that, remember, this was Karina Gold that was pushing for this censorship of social media, and there's Kevin Chan right there, the director, I believe it was, of Facebook in Canada, the head of public policy for Facebook in Canada. There he is being on stage next to Karina Gold. So I just wanted to point that out real quick.
Such as Science Minister Christy Duncan and Liberal MP Rob Oliphant, who appeared next to Chan at the Ontario Science Centre for an event co-hosted by Facebook. Karina Gold, the Minister of Democratic Institutions, also appeared with Chan at the Economic Club of Canada. Facebook announced in October 2017 its Canadian Election Integrity Initiative, a set of public media literacy and politician cybersecurity programs.
The thing I also wanted to put out is Kevin Chan had a meeting with Bill Morneau, our finance minister, and in that, it wasn't registered as a lobby or anything like that. You know what the excuse was that Bill Morneau gave? He was trying to set up a Facebook Live event. Now, why would he choose the head of public policy for Facebook in Canada to help set up a Facebook Live event? To stream, I don't know if it was the budget or something else, I can't remember. But why would he call the head of public policy, Kevin Chan? And this, to me, doesn't make sense because he could do this, something that millions of people have done. At best, he could have Googled what was going on. He could have made a call to Facebook, like go to one of those helplines on Facebook and asked how to set it up, which again, in my opinion, shows two things. It either shows the connection of Facebook to the Trudeau government, or if he was being completely honest, it just proves my point at the beginning that these people don't understand social media because a Facebook Live event is not hard to set up. Not at all. Millions of people around the world have done it. Big data is probably the biggest single contributor when it comes to election fraud. Many people in America are seeing this right now about the way that it affects the outcome. This could be from Google censoring searches in order to make sure that the good stories, say, about Donald Trump get pushed to the bottom while the bad stories get on the top. This could be Facebook and Twitter that are shadow banning people that are part of the opposition, people who are against the current government, so their messages don't get out, and that shadow ban means that relevant information that is relevant today, when it's no longer relevant tomorrow, it won't get out until it's too late. So we can see how they are a big problem. And again, when it comes to Facebook and Kevin Chan, going back to, this was October 9th, 2017, From National Observer, it says Facebook is to target bad actors in the upcoming election. Facebook says it wants to prevent bad actors from hacking Canadian democracy, but after announcing some new steps on Thursday to tackle the problem, both the social media giant and the federal government admits much more needs to be done to safeguard the 2019 election. To safeguard it, I don't believe that for a second, not with everything that we currently know. So, you can form your own opinions. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But this is, I believe, is the Trudeau government's attempt to manipulate the upcoming election and silence its critics, especially with what we're seeing now, whether it's SNC-Lavalin or the Mark Norman case. We can see how this has become more relevant now than it ever has been. And then we also have the $600 million that was given to the news sources, and that is more or less bought most of their allegiance. But then at the same time, we're figuring out they're having secret meetings about how this money should be spent, and of course certain sources such as Rebel Media is not going to get that money. But let me know what you think in the comments section below, and thank you for stopping in. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion.